McCarthy.
Why would you want to go overseas with government shut down, with people missing their paychecks? And if we don't get this back open, they could miss their paycheck again by next week.
A spokesman for Nancy Pelosi, meanwhile, says she never planned to travel to Egypt, and members of Congress who are going on that trip were planning to sit down with NATO allies. The Wall Street Journal reporting that Michael Cohen hired an IT firm to rig online polls in favor of Donald Trump ahead of the 2016 presidential election.
President Trump's then attorney reportedly promised to pay $50,000 to a small tech firm, Redfinch Solutions, to rig online polls for CNBC and the Drudge Report. However, instead of paying the $50,000 the company owner John Gauger was expecting, Cohen handed him a blue Walmart bag containing between $12,000 and $13,000 in cash, and randomly, a boxing glove that Mr. Cohen said had been worn by a Brazilian mixed martial arts fighter. It was also claimed Cohen asked Gauger to create the @WomenForCohen Twitter account in May of 2016, which would praise Cohen as a sex symbol. Mike Bauer, NBC News Radio.
State Department employees affected by the government shutdown are set to get a paycheck soon. Today, the Deputy Undersecretary said the department expects to resume operations and fund most salaries beginning January 20th. However, checks from that period will not be received until February 14th. Stocks are higher on word of positive trade developments with China. Markets posted solid gains after a Wall Street Journal report said the U.S. could lift tariffs on some goods to ease tensions with Beijing. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 163 points to 24,370. The Nasdaq advanced 50 to 70.84, and the S&P gained 20, closing at 26.36. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Looking for a new place to eat, delicious food at a great value? The Tri-City Center in Redlands is proud to announce the grand opening of a fine new dining establishment. Terry's Diner, at the former location of the Spunky Steer in Redlands, is officially open for business daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. with delicious, mouth-watering breakfast, lunches, and dinners. Treat yourself to Terry's tasty dessert menu, such as Terry's famous sundaes, banana splits, hot fudge cake, old-fashioned root beer floats, Frosties, cakes and pies, too. You'll find weekly lunch and dinner specials, all under $10, including Angus steaks, burgers, Greek salads, pasta seafoods with wine and beer. Terry's brings years of tasty temptations from DJs in San Bernardino and Alta Loma. Join a new tradition in Redlands. Stop by at 1350 Industrial Park Avenue between Tennessee and Alabama in the Tri-City Center. Google Terry's Diner Redlands on Yelp or find them terrysdinerredlands.com.
This is KCAA.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio. Here at U-Turn Radio, we believe in big-hearted communities and small government. Join your hosts, Nadia Renner, Tom Murphy, and Eric Steinman, as we work to put local governments on a diet and champion the charities that support your community. So come on, join us and let's turn it around.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio. I hope you guys are staying dry. It is pouring out here in the Inland Empire. And drive safe because it is crazy out there, let me tell you. We are live and we are all here. Eric, Tom, welcome.
And Nadia.
And myself, Nadia.
Here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Durin.
And Durin, who takes care of all of our social media, pictures and videos. You guys are more than welcome to go to uturnradio.com. We have all of our different episodes on there, and we also have all of the content that Duran creates. To be part of the show, you can call 909-792-5222. That's 909-792-5222. We have a great show today, very informative.
Yes, we always have great shows, every one of them.
That's how I open the show every time, because we do have great shows. So let's talk a little bit about if this is the first time listening to U-Turn. If you call in, you get a prize. It's that easy. Just call in, you get a prize. And when you call in, we'll tell you what you win.
What prize do you get?
Well, I was going to tease and say call, and then I will tell you what you win. But, I mean, we'll spin for charity. Here at U-Turn, what we do is we spin for charity, and whatever amount of money it lands on, we go ahead and donate that money to your favorite local charity here in the Inland Empire. That's what we really do.
Okay, but so technically you don't get a prize other than a good feeling, right?
That's a prize.
Right.
I mean, if I feel good, it's a prize, no?
But your favorite charity, they get a chunk of change, right?
True.
Okay, so call in.
All right, 909-792-5222. So last week we had a show when we were talking about supervisors. We talked about how they picked a new supervisor because for the 3rd district, James Ramos, who used to be the supervisor there, is no longer there, and we have a new supervisor. Dawn Rowe is her name, right?
Dawn Rao, I think. R-O. It's pronounced like now, Rao, I believe.
Oh, Rao.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a new one. And to listen to that, like I said, go to uturnradio.com. And the reason why I bring this up, too, is because we're going to be talking about an area that is in that district. We're going to be talking about Joshua Tree.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And pretty much Joshua Tree, I went for my first time, and it's a beautiful place. I actually ended up going right before they shut down the national park, so I got to experience that, and it was beautiful. But there's a lot of what we know as Airbnbs out there, which are short rental vacation places, right?
Right.
So I just went, what was it, like towards the end of last year? But from my understanding, this place has always been more of a quiet, like, place where you would go for hiking, that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, it was, growing up camping there, it was a kind of a small, sleepy desert town. And the park wasn't particularly busy or, crowded. Of course, that was 40 years ago. And I guess things have changed out there because of the park.
Right. So now they have a bunch of like tents, trailers. And when I say tents and trailers, they're like really pretty. They're designed really nice and equipped for you to go out there and pretty much stay out there and enjoy some time out in the desert.
Yeah, this is not like camping that we did 40 years ago.
Right.
These are not located within the boundary of the park. It's folks in the Joshua Tree area that said, "Hey, let's turn this into a little opportunity for us. Let's put an old Airstream camper out on the backyard. We'll fix it up and we'll rent it out. Put it up there on B&B and rent it out."
They even have storage containers, which is really cool. I really like that idea. I actually got to experience and stayed in one once, but it's equipped just like if you were to be like in a short little or small little apartment, but it's a storage container. And usually they're equipped with the restroom. Some have like a really small kitchen, but that's what Joshua Tree is almost known for. However, it's illegal to operate a nightly rental in unincorporated area in San Bernardino County, but there's really no enforcement codes out there that will say yes or no to any of these people that are renting out, the trailers, the tents, and the storage containers out there. So there's a lot of people that are complaining, and this is mainly like people, like local people that are complaining that there's a lot of kind of like a mess because people are just coming in and out. They rent these short-term vacation places, and they're not used to that lifestyle. Like we explained, it's been more of a quiet lifestyle prior to Airbnbs.
Right. No. And
wait a second. Wait a second. You see a lot of people.
Yes,
you see a lot of people complaining. Let's quantify that.
Right. I mean,
that could be two people, and it becomes a lot because people are looking for somebody who's complaining to get a quote from. So.
Well.
Is there a great outcry, or is there a few people complaining?
Well, I don't have the exact number, but there's a few, enough to get
enough to get.
And actually, we're gonna have a call in later on that you could pose that.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
right.
Go ask them and see how many is a lot of people complaining.
Okay. That sounds good. I mean, to a certain extent, I can understand. If you lived out there 20 years and beginning, let's say 3 years ago, your next door neighbor begin to have a different crowd in every 2-3 days, and maybe it was a crowd that might stay up a little later than you're used to or something like that. That might begin to bother you, right? So what do you do?
Me? I should ask you that. I know. I mean, usually I would probably be the younger people that are there making the noise. I should ask you guys, like, if you guys lived in Joshua Tree and now you guys are seeing people come in and out, a lot of young people, a lot of parties, a lot of music festivals, because that's really one of the complaints that they were talking about is music festivals that they have out there. How would you guys feel about it if you guys are so used to a nice, quiet area, beautiful place, desert? What would your reaction be, Eric?
Buy a bigger piece of property, and then you'll have the piece you want. You know,
But come on, people don't have that type of money to say like, oh.
No, it's not that type of money. I mean, if you think about if that's all that important to you, because the areas change. You know, the one thing that's going on out in Joshua Tree is there's kind of an emergence of people that are engaged in this climbing. And Joshua Tree has always been known for what they call bouldering, and I don't know much about it. And I had some friends that were into that, and they have these big boulders, and you go out there and you climb on these boulders and camp out. And climbing as a sport is getting a lot more popular. So, and it's something that you can do without a whole lot of money. It's just yourself and some gear, and you go out there with some friends and do this climbing. So if an area is getting more popular and people are using it, you know, really the answer is you just kind of roll with it, or you look to create your own zone of privacy around there, because other people are just as, you know, entitled to use their property as you're entitled to, you know, have peace in your property.
All right. Well, before I tell you what one local said about the noise and all this stuff, let's go to the phone. We have Katie on the phone. Welcome to U-Turn Radio, Katie.
Hi guys. Sorry, I have a 2-year-old screaming my name right now. I'm trying to get the, Netflix to go on. Okay, what's up, guys?
What's going on? You're calling us from Pen and Napkins Charity, right?
Yes. So I'm the founder of Pen and Napkins. We're a local charity that helps families transition out of homelessness into fully furnished and decorated homes.
So when somebody's getting out of homelessness, you help them decorate their home once they already get a house, right?
Yeah, so get this. When a family is in transition out of usually a transitional center, which is more of a long-term stay, it's not like a shelter that's more an emergency base. It's more of like it has programming, reunification with their children. It has job placement. It's like kind of more of a good stepping stone back into society, right? Whether they're transitioning out of domestic violence or prison or off the street, it really helps them adapt to the world again and kind of heal from whatever experience they had. So we partner with transitional centers, and then when they move into their home, they usually come with nothing, so they usually end up with nothing once they graduate. And when they move into a fully furnished home, we see a higher success rate of these families staying out of homelessness. So the statistics have shown that like 50% of families that transition into an empty home can end up back on the street, but with furniture that drops to 1%.
Katie, let me ask you, how did you get this started? I've never heard of something like this before.
Yeah, well, I'm not the only charity that does this, but I heard about it just by looking for a need that I could solve. I have a background in design, and I felt called out of it when we designed like $1 million conference table. And I was just like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I felt led to kind of explore other options. And I quit my job in the design industry, went back to school, actually studied at a seminary in San Diego. And when I was down there, I did a class, and part of the class was to look into a local community development project. So I picked a transitional center because I was interested in helping homeless families, and found out that these families really need furniture. And I thought it was really fitting that I came from a background of designing furniture, and then God would lead me to a place where I could actually provide furniture for families. And so I told them that the next family they had that transitioned out, to have them call me, and I would get them some furniture. And I figured I would go on Craigslist or look around and see if people I knew had stuff lying around that they didn't need. So it started out with this like kind of modest approach, but then when a family actually called me, and the mom said she had 5 kids and they were moving into a 1-bedroom apartment, and she didn't know how to explain to them that none of them were going to have a bed, I just told her, I was like, I'm going to fully furnish and decorate your apartment. And then I got off the phone and I was like, oh crap, how am I going to pay for this?
Right.
So we had the nonprofit, my husband and I had the nonprofit established for a few months at that point. And so I quickly started just getting the word out and said, hey, I have this family. They really need furniture. Do you have any donations? Please, reach out to me, let me know, and we'll come pick it up. And we did. We picked everything up with a trailer. And then actually Jerome's Furniture reached back out to me, and they helped out. And since then, we've helped out over 60 families transition into fully furnished and decorated apartments.
That's awesome. I see that you've furnished 65 homes so far.
Yeah, roughly. I think we actually have a little bit more than that. I think we haven't updated the website, but yeah, I think that's about accurate.
How do you get your funding right now?
Our funding is through people like you, through private donors. We don't really qualify for a lot of grants because the state of California, unfortunately, doesn't have a lot of grants for furniture specifically. They help with families in transition, but it's usually for housing, and then they have like some grants that have basic essentials where it's like might qualify as funding for a bed frame or a table, but we go way beyond that. We personalize the bedding to each kid. We even put their name printed on the pillow. We decorate the space based on what character they like or what color they like. And we ask the mom what kind of colors she wants to see when she walks in. So it really is catered to, they're getting a professional interior designer each time, so we partner with local interior designers as well.
Are you going back and visiting after, a year after, 6 months after, that type of thing, and getting feedback
we haven't
like that?
had the opportunity to do that yet. We still stay in contact with some of the families who reach out just to say thank you or check in around Christmas and something like that. But honestly, the reason why we partner with transitional centers as opposed to just shelters is because we know that the transitional center's job is to have a follow-up program. And that's something we look for in the centers that we partner with, so that 3 months after they move in, they're getting, checked in on, and then it kind of dwindles into 6 months, 9 months, and then they're considered sustainable,
So you're working with some of these existing charities that are focused on homelessness, and you're doing the furnishing piece. Is that kind of it?
Yeah. So we've worked with like Family Promise. We've worked with YWCA, Union Rescue Mission. That's just to name a few. So we partner specifically with them so that the professional social workers are doing their job and their due diligence in the counseling aspect or in the research aspect, and we're just helping them remain confident in their home and feel like they have a space that they can bring friends over to and they can really embrace and be proud of. It's like dignity basically in design.
Are you guys currently working with a family right now?
Yeah, we have the Davis family up here in Lancaster, and we serve everywhere from Bakersfield all the way down to San Diego, so including San Bernardino County as well. But right now our next family is a family of 6. They were actually living in Orange County and then found a house up here and moved in without any furniture. They have air mattresses on the ground, and the 8-year-old girl is sleeping on like a crib mattress on the ground right now. So we're going to be fully furnishing their home February 2nd.
What's your cost to furnish a home, typically?
It depends on how many kids, but typically, like for a 4-bedroom house, we look at like $4,000, and this covers all the furniture, all the expenses, like our storage units, and covers the cost of traveling to pick up furniture, and then all brand new bedding because we like to provide new bedding. So it really depends. But we've furnished an entire 3-bedroom home for under $400 before too. It just depends on what comes in as far as donations, and yeah, it just kind of depends. But we kind of squeezed every penny out of each project. We're pretty frugal in our approach to design.
That's when you definitely need to know how to shop for good bargains.
Yeah, you can ask me where to buy anything, and I'll tell you where the best price is. It's been 5 years of doing this, so I know where the deals are.
I can only imagine. So let's go ahead and spin, Tom.
I'm excited. I've never done this before. I'm a little nervous.
So we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel for charity, and whatever it lands on, that's what your charity will get. So
we landed on $1,200.
Nice. So, Katie, we are donating $1,200 to Pen and Napkin Organization.
That's amazing. You guys, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Phenomenal. Wow. Well, you will definitely be furnishing at least 3 bedrooms with that money, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
I should hook you up with my wife.
Oh, yeah.
What does your wife do?
Her budget's a lot better than
$4,000 for the whole house.
$1,200 just 3 rooms. I like the sound of that.
Awesome,
I
Katie.
know, right?
We're going to go ahead and take your information down, and I'll stay in touch with you to get all that taken care of. So thank you so much for calling us and letting us know what you guys are doing.
Oh, God bless you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, so just like Katie, you can call in 909-792-5222.
We got kind of a theme today running through today's show. We got housing, a housing charity that we just had an opportunity to help. And,
Yeah, we could ask what it costs to furnish a shipping container.
Well, that's true. I don't think it would be a lot because, I mean, it's so small.
Yeah, it's the same stuff, but that's a good point.
All right, so before we got a
Which
call.
leads to the question of, if you take the shipping container and put it on a trailer, then can the county regulate it, or is it a motor
No, it's
vehicle?
moving. However, how would you live in there if it's moving?
Well,
I
you
can
don't
only
have
imagine.
to move it, but if it's on a trailer, it's movable, and it is.
Oh, well, that's true.
Then you license it at the
So
DMV, and then they're in a quandary.
RV.
Wait, but if you're a trucker, don't you need like wherever you park, it has to be like it has to be like some type of particular areas. You can't just go and park anywhere.
No,
right?
it'd be an RV. It'd be a recreational vehicle.
Well, I am a
right?
trucker. Sort
So
of.
how
I
does
got
that
my
work?
TDL, and I don't know the quite answer to that, but it's usually now it's when that beeper goes off and your 8 hours is up, you got to find a place and get over. You got about 15 minutes to pull over and find a place and stop. So.
Like to park because
Yeah, it
usually
used
they
to
have
be
that
you had a
cabin
little
stuff,
leeway
right?
when you're filling out a logbook, but all the trucks now have to be electronic, and you can only drive so long before you have to pull over and sleep.
So what? It shuts down. Like you can't drive your car after that, or what?
It logs into the system that you've driven over your time, and then when you go through one of those way stations, or especially at a state line, they plug into your system, and if they see that you have done so, you're in for it. So, and it hasn't happened to me, so I can't exactly describe in for it, but I have been warned. The safe bet is to pull over and not drive past your allowed time.
How do you even get anywhere in LA with traffic? Like 8 hours, that's easy probably from LA to San Bernardino. It feels like with traffic.
That's why they're all.
You try and
that's why they're all
drive
driving in
that's
at
why
2
they're
o'clock in the
driving at
morning.
2 and 3 in the morning. Yeah, they're not trying to hit that rush hour. That's bad news. That happened to me once.
Ooh.
So.
All right, so let's get back to the Airbnb. So before Katie's phone call, we were talking about how locals complain, and we don't know exactly how many. It could be, like Eric said, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 20. I don't know.
Yeah, could be.
I don't have those stats. But one of them, Mark Gretton, said, "Now I am surrounded by Airbnbs filled with vacationing strangers who seem to think anything goes out here." So that was part of a LA Times interview. And
Yeah, there was another piece of that that LA Times article where he said, it's kind of split the community now. That's a reporter talking, but apparently it was enough of an issue that it's.
Are we going to fast forward at some point to the part where the county imposes a license on all weddings in the whole county? Is that going to happen?
We're going to
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Okay.
well, because this is happening.
This is in Joshua Tree. Yes,
This is the catalyst.
This is some climbers in Joshua Tree staying in mini homes and.
Well, because this happened, there was a Board of Supervisor meeting on Tuesday, October 16th, and we happened to be there live and direct. So they had pretty much everybody who owns like an Airbnb. Now the owners of the Airbnb were kind of disappointed with what was going on, and pretty much went and expressed themselves because it's a job for them, and they're making new businesses out there. So it seemed unfair to these short rental vacation owners to now they might have to get permits now. So we have Tony DeMille, who is somebody that attended the supervisor meeting, and this is what he said about this kind of like restrictions that they want to create for these people that have the Airbnbs, because then that would mean they have to get permits. That means they have to pay stuff, and that type of thing will roll out. So let's play Tony DeMille's audio where he expresses in regards of the county getting involved
Yeah, and this is a recording from that meeting on the 16th.
We have come here today to voice our concern over the short-term rental ordinance, or STVR, currently being drafted by the county. My wife and I own and operate a small vacation retreat in the unincorporated region of Yucca Valley. When we first arrived here, there were very few motels and a lack of other options for places to stay. As more and more visitors came, we, like others, saw a need to accommodate them, while at the same time providing a more unique, immersive, memorable experience. We have an incredible national park backyard, with visitation growing dramatically over the last 5 years, from 1 million in 2013 to 3 million last year. Why has that growth been happening? One of the biggest reasons is because independent and creative individuals found a way to solve the lack of overnight accommodations for these increasing numbers. We've all worked hard to create over 200 viable, profitable, and unique solutions that are not single-family residences and do not have an impact on our current housing crisis. They are alternative structures such as trailers, teepees, and yurts. The STVR ordinance currently being drafted by you and enacted by year's end does not include any of these alternative structures. We have been operating our alternative rentals for 3 years and had over 2,800 guests stay with us. Our retreat is clean, safe, and is operated with zero complaints from our neighbors. Our guests spend money locally, and we spend our money locally on local goods and services at our local businesses. We have also contributed over $22,000 in transient occupancy tax to the county. In 2 months, we and all of these rentals will no longer be allowed to operate. This will have a massive impact on our community. Businesses that have started will be forced to shut down. Jobs that have been created will disappear. Services that have been contracted will be lost. This seems like an arbitrary and short-sighted decision by the county of San Bernardino. Sadly, the county will blindly support big box stores, strip malls, and chains, but not support this local community cottage industry, and is going as far as saying it should all be done away with. This doesn't seem fair. This has historically been considered a depressed region, income low, unemployment high, the county in debt. These alternative lodging options have helped alleviate some of these issues. They give visitors an affordable and unique lodging option. They employ cook cleaners and maintenance people and create new and engaging business opportunities. All goods and services are kept here within the local community. Additionally, a 7% TOT tax goes directly to the county to help with its essential services and paying down their debt. All we're asking is to be included in the upcoming ordinance so that we can legally comply with permitting, codes, and inspections and continue to operate and contribute to the growth of our community. Thank you very much.
So that audio there was from the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday, the 16th of last year, and that was one of the Airbnb owners out there. On the phone, we have Mr. David Wirt, Public Information Officer for San Bernardino County. Welcome to YouTube Radio. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. We are covering and went over some of the concerns of locals, and I'm not sure if you heard also Airbnb owner. Now, give us the latest update on this topic.
Well, first of all, I got a little clip of, heard a little clip of what you played, and it was at a recent board meeting, and I was at that meeting, so I heard all of the comments, and that was actually one of the most puzzling things that I've encountered in my time with county government, and I've been here for a long time. There were a lot of people who showed up at the board meeting who were under the impression that the county is looking to shut down all of the short-term rentals, the Airbnb rentals that are in the Morongo Basin, and no one here at the county has any idea how anyone got that impression. The county has no plans whatsoever to shut down anyone, unless there's a rare instance where there's a facility that's presenting a clear and present health and safety risk. There are no plans to shut down these places wholesale. As a matter of fact, the county's current policy is to allow all of these places to operate, regardless of whether they're in compliance or not, until we can get an ordinance in place. So the current status of this topic is that the county has been meeting with stakeholders in the community as we draft an ordinance that the community will be able to review and comment on before it goes to the Board of Supervisors, at which time everyone will have a chance to comment again. And our ultimate goal is to have all of the short-term rentals in the Morongo Basin, including the ones that are so-called alternative structures, the ones that are tents, trailers, or whatever, to remain open at the present time, and to craft an ordinance that will allow them to continue to operate exactly as they're operating now. The basic philosophy of our code enforcement efforts here in San Bernardino County is based on the idea that people have the right to do whatever they want to do on their own property, as long as it's not presenting a clear and present or clear and present danger to health and safety, and as long as it's not an undue nuisance to the neighbors. And our code enforcement efforts are completely complaint-driven. We do not have code enforcement officers who go out on patrol looking for violations. The only time they go into action is when they get a phone call from someone about a potential code violation, and at that time, they will go out to the property. They do not have the legal ability to go onto a property without a property owner's permission. And the approach is not, you're under violation, here's a fine. The approach is, hey, it looks like you might have a violation here. Let's work together to address it. And, that's how we approach these things. We are not shutting down wholesale any of these facilities in the Morongo Basin, and the county has no intention of doing so.
Do you have any dates or deadlines where these people, either the locals or the rental owners, should be aware of, or where you guys will give them kind of like this type of update or news?
Not at this point. I mean, the next step in the process is we're currently drafting the ordinance. The next step in the process will be, once the ordinance is drafted, is to share it with the community, and we don't have a date for that yet. And the reason we don't want to give out an estimate is because of, the way that rumor mills work in all communities, is that if I were to say, geez, we're shooting for such and such a date, if something comes up and that forces us to delay, for instance, a new circumstance that we're aware of, and we miss that deadline, people lose trust in the county. They think we're lying to them. So, but there will be plenty of public notice, and of course, when this thing eventually goes to the Board of Supervisors, there will be an opportunity for the public to comment, not just here in San Bernardino, but at the at the remote location in Joshua Tree, where people just have to go to the Joshua Tree Government Center and they can communicate to the board over closed circuit TV.
Now, let me ask you, David, what are the Board of Supervisors' concerns with this topic?
The Board of Supervisors has not had an opportunity to address this topic in public yet, so we don't really know what the board is thinking in terms of this specific issue. But I think it's safe to say, given the county's overarching philosophy, is that what the board wants to do is the board wants to find a way to make sure that people who are operating short-term rentals in a responsible manner, meaning that they're not a threat to health and safety, can continue to do so unfettered.
Well, wouldn't one way of doing that be just not to regulate them?
Well, I mean, and we're not quite sure that we're looking to regulate them. What we basically want people to do is ensure that if you're operating a facility like that, you're providing a clean and safe environment to your customers, and that you're not being a nuisance to your neighbors. And so those are the types of, regulations that we would be looking at. And I don't think anyone in the community would disagree with the fact that if these places are going to operate, there should be rules in place so that they don't present a nuisance to their neighbors and they don't pose a public health or safety risk.
Yeah, is that because you think that nothing can really operate unless it is approved by the county without posing a public safety risk, or
no, not at all?
So you said it was complaint driven. What's the number of complaints that drove this?
It drove what?
That drove you having hearings to look at regulating these things?
Actually, I think what probably drove this more than anything else were business owners who wanted to know what the rules were, and as it turned out, the county didn't have any rules that applied to the Morongo Basin. But there have been some complaints. I don't have a number, but I can get that for you. But whether it's been 10 complaints or 10,000 complaints, you really can't argue with the fact that this is an issue that needs to be addressed one way or the other.
I can.
Oh, okay.
if it's 10 complaints, it's not a big enough issue. You guys got a lot of stuff to do over there at the county, and if you don't know, you can listen to our show. We'll clue you in. But it sounds like some of the clips that we played, talk about an industry that's going along fine and providing services for a number of people that are happy with it, and leaving well enough alone is certainly one option. And anytime the county does get involved, it's usually a big dragnet that draws in a whole lot of other things. And I think we're going to get there in this conversation, right, Tom?
Yeah, and actually, maybe to segue into that, what are the major differences between the draft ordinance as it's drafted now and the current short-term ordinance that's already on the county's books?
The current short-term residential rental ordinance strictly applies to the mountain areas. To apply it countywide, you'd basically have to rewrite it and write those words out of it that apply it strictly to the mountain areas. But the county doesn't want to do that. The county doesn't believe in one-size-fits-all regulations for things that need to be regulated. And so what we'd like to do is work with the Morongo Basin community and come up with something that works for the people who live and have businesses out there.
Okay, so the draft ordinance is would it cover just the Morongo Basin?
Yes.
Okay, so you would have, for the short-term rental in the county ordinance, you'd have kind of the mountain region short-term rental section, and then the Morongo Basin short-term rental section.
That's my understanding of the path that we're going toward. Of course, it's still a work in progress, but when county staff has something that they think is worthy of throwing out there for approval, the community will have a chance to weigh in on it.
Okay. And to that, the one currently on the books, I looked it over, and there were some interesting things in there. One of which was, it seemed like it really restricts, and granted, this is just in the mountain region, but if I'm in the county, if I'm part of the county sweatshop that produces ordinances, I'm going to go get that one, and that's going to be the base that I write from.
You mean like the Hellendale ordinance covering 1,000 people that just got rolled out to 19,000 square miles and over 1 million people?
Different show, Eric, different show. So I guess my question is that the current ordinance for the mountain region really restricts the ability of like somebody to rent their place out to host a wedding. Both in numbers and parking places available on site, that type of thing. Can the folks in the Morongo Basin expect the same kind of concept in terms of renting their spots for other activities?
I'm thinking the ordinance is going to be very different than the one for the mountains, and that's why another one's being written. And we're not going to use the mountain ordinance as a template, because the situation in the mountains is very different. The homes in the mountains are much closer together than they are in the Morongo Basin, and so that's where parking becomes an issue. Parking in the mountains is incredibly limited. Roads are very narrow, and when someone rents their cabin to someone, and then that someone invites 25 of their friends to come up for a party while they're renting the cabin, those folks, those 25 people, have nowhere to park except on the very narrow roads blocking traffic or in other people's driveways, and so that's why you'd see something like that in an ordinance for the mountains. That might not be as much of an issue in the Morongo Basin.
So were weddings in the mountains a big enough problem that they needed to get dragged into this?
Weddings in the mountains, a big enough problem to be dragged into?
Drag into the ordinance, I guess, that exists that limits weddings. You said that there was an article in the paper that said the county moves to, require everybody having a wedding to now get a permit from the county. I don't know if that's correct or not, or where that came from, but I understood that's what we're talking about here, Tom.
Well, there are some facilities that are operating in the Morongo Basin that conduct weddings and big events like that. And for events like that, pretty much anywhere in the county, you do need a permit from the county. And again, that's more than anything else to ensure that neighbors aren't unfairly impacted, that if it's a large enough gathering, that the Sheriff's Department is aware of it, so they can make it a point to go by there to make sure everything's orderly, or drive by it, or anything like that. But for any large event in the county, one needs a permit, so the county can have an opportunity to determine if it's something that is an appropriate use for that particular area, or whether it's going to cause an undue nuisance and burden on the other people who live in the area.
Isn't that a little at odds with your statement that the county's position is to let people who have property pretty much do what they can with their property if it's not posing a big problem? So my original question was, were weddings posing a big problem, or when you got around to writing an ordinance, did you throw in weddings and some other items in there?
I wasn't around when that ordinance was written, but I'm guessing since the Mountain Ordinance addresses weddings, that weddings were an issue when the ordinance was written.
And what's it take to be an issue? Is it just one or two people complaining, or does it have to be regular? And do you do any balancing when you do these things against, 1,000 weddings that are going by with, happy neighbors that are invited to the wedding versus maybe a couple of them that are getting complained about?
Yeah, there isn't any set number of complaints or citations or problems that prompt the county to decide, okay, let's look at doing an ordinance. What the check and balance here is the community's opportunity to come forward when county staff has drafted a proposed regulation to tell the Board of Supervisors, don't pass that thing. It's not needed. It's not necessary. Everything's fine. Ask your people how many complaints there have been. I do know that there have been, again, I can't put a number on it, but a number of complaints about, people in the Morongo Basin, some who are using their private property to run large events, and these are places that were not necessarily designed for large events, and they don't have permits to operate as large events. And the complaints that come into the county are that that it causes traffic issues, and that people purchased homes, are living in these neighborhoods because they wanted a quiet place to live, and when they have a neighbor who is using a private residence for large events, that's an instance where the second part of my statement comes into play. Yes, you have the absolute right to do whatever you want on your property, as long as you're not posing a health a risk to public safety and health, or causing an undue nuisance on your neighbors. This whole thing reminds me of a town hall meeting that we did up in Victorville in 2010, maybe it was early 2011, and we had asked the people in the room, what they thought some of county government's problems were, and a gentleman got up and he said, the biggest problem with the county is code enforcement, because the government has no right to tell me what I can do on my property. And then later on in the meeting, we had another opportunity for the public to talk, and the same gentleman gets up, and he says, the county's problem is code enforcement, because code enforcement won't come up, tell my neighbor to clean up his yard. And that's the problem that code enforcement has. You got, one group of people saying government shouldn't, tell me what I can do on my property, but then those same people, when their neighbor is causing a nuisance, calling the county and saying, you need to do something about my neighbor because what he's doing on his private property is causing me a nuisance. And so the county tries to strike the best balance between those two interests.
I know you're the information officer for the county, and you got a position to make that statement, but, we can get into, past shows and stuff that, personal knowledge that, that's not always the case. There's a revenue component to the county licensing stuff. They get an annual fee, 1,000 to hire more people, and, there's a lot of considerations that go into this stuff. So, if a few complaints get put up to be a big problem and you're drafting ordinances, then it comes before the supervisors and the public has to go and try and reel that back in. Mm-hmm. That's a lot different than really having problem-driven reactions.
Yeah, I'm thinking if you want to take a look at the number of businesses that might be required to get a permit and what the cost of those permits would be, you'd probably see the county really isn't making any kind of real money doing that. That's not the motivation here.
Yeah.
If David,
I mean, there is no way the cost of a permit is going to fund the hiring of anyone.
How much is the county collecting on fees and permits? Tom, do we have that number?
I don't know the total.
Yeah.
But I mean, fees and permits are two different things. But and the thing with a fee is that a fee, by law, the county has to demonstrate that the fee covers the cost of delivering the service.
Oh, no, you don't. What about the FP5 regulation? You got vacant lots that the county doesn't even have an obligation to provide the fire service for, and they're going to charge $150 per lot on those lots, and they don't even have any cost associated with it. And maybe they're getting around that by calling that fee a tax or something, but what's your explanation of that if you take that position?
No, I think maybe a more applicable example would be we had a gentleman on the show that talked about, I think it was flu inspections. He had a restaurant on his business, and his land, if you will, was part of an annexation, and so it went from the city to the county. Fire would be doing the inspection, and his fees for the inspection like tripled or quadrupled. They went up substantially, and he was saying, hey, how can they justify, and Mr. Work indicated that an inspection really should only cost the business owner whatever it cost the county to execute that inspection. But his point was, hey, the city was doing it for, I'm just going to pull a number out. The city was doing it for $50, and now the county's doing it for $600.
Yeah, well, I'll give you another example. In
that case, it could be the city wasn't charging enough to cover its costs.
Okay, well, what about this one? I work in the telecommunications business, and we put in applications for permits to put up communication sites all over the country. And in the county of San Bernardino, I put in applications for permits on 6 sites. And on those 6 sites, which are all concrete and steel and nothing that can burn, they needed a fire inspection, and it was $1,600 they wanted to charge for each fire inspection. To have somebody at the fire department look at the plans of something that can't burn and say, this is what you need to do for fire or whatnot. And midway through that process, they raised that fee to $6,500 per site. And when I complained enough, somebody finally set up an appointment for me to go down to the fire department and get those signed off under the grandfathered $1,600 a piece, and it took 10 minutes to do it. So how does 10 minutes cost what you wanted to charge at that time, $48,000 or some such thing?
Now, I don't know exactly what their rationale is because I wasn't prepared to talk about that today. I can certainly get someone from County Fire to to give you a call, get on your show, and explain their fee structure. But I mean, sometimes the fees have to cover more than just the person who comes out there and does the inspection. It has to cover the people back at the office who process the paperwork and test any type of materials that are recovered. I'm thinking of public health type things, and and the other overhead costs of the department to provide that service. So I mean, the thing is, things like code enforcement and whatnot are don't get any general fund money, for a reason, because they're not provided to everyone in the county. Code enforcement just covers the unincorporated areas. So the fees that they charge for things do have to cover the expenses of the department.
Look, one last question to circle back around to the B&B thing. So if you just go to the B&B website and look at places in Joshua Tree, I'm gonna describe, if you will, 2 or 3 different pictures that I saw, and David, if you could explain to me how the draft regulation is going to cover a structure like this, that'd be great. So, like the first.
Well, first of all, I really don't. I mean, I really don't know, and we wouldn't discuss what may or may not be in the ordinance yet. Again, because we want to. We want to control rumors, and we don't want to speculate what might be in the ordinance in case it isn't in the ordinance, because whenever, if we were to do that, the word immediately would be out there, oh, the ordinance is going to do this, this, and this, and we don't know yet what exactly is going to be in the ordinance. So I really couldn't tell you what
you probably know what's not going to be in it, because it starts by getting drafted internally at the county and then gets brought up to the supervisors, right?
Well, I mean, it gets drafted internally, but before it gets drafted internally, we've had a number of meetings with people in the community asking for their thoughts and ideas, asking about their concerns and problems, and that's what informs the county's drafting of the ordinance. And then, yes, after that, it goes to the Board of Supervisors.
Great. Do you guys have any more questions? Because our time is running out.
We'll let him go. He's been very gracious.
Yeah, thank you so much, David, for your time. I really appreciate it for being here on U-Turn Radio.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
All right, that was David Word, Public Information Officer for San Bernardino County. Should we go and play our last audio before we go, or should we?
Yeah.
Or you guys want to just wrap this up?
Let's play that
audio. Let's talk about this a little bit.
All right.
I mean, so I'm going to set this up. Eric, let's say you're a 30-year resident of Joshua Tree. And
well, I'm a 30-year resident, actually 60-year resident of the mountains, which already got this.
Okay, but run with the scenario here. So, and you've been just living out there quietly. In the last 4 or 5 years, things have been getting a little noisy out there. Okay, Nadia, you're actually you don't live out in Joshua Tree, but you've bought into a piece of property out there, and you've put a couple of those movable things that Eric was talking about, cool looking tent and, and an old Airstream trailer out there, and you're renting it, and it's paying, and you're making good money, and you're giving folks in the community are able to work. Okay, so that's the scenario. So my question is, Eric, what do you want to see out of this ordinance?
I'm more in favor of people working out their problems. I mean, your neighbors are super important to you, and you got to be, human and civil and work things out amongst yourself. And, an ordinance just usually is something where both people try and get somebody else to do their dirty work for them, and they don't solve a lot of problems in my experience. So,
okay, Nadia,
and it sounds like some of the people that are, commenting on this in support of keeping their yurts for rent and whatnot, say, look, it isn't us, because we got a good relationship with our neighbors. And so you really got to look at not only how many complaints you get, but what are the complaints based on? Is it really somebody who's next to something they have an ongoing problem with, or is it somebody who's, trying to get something through on their own agenda?
That's a very solid point. Mm-hmm. I didn't think about that part, because
we learned all this stuff when we were kids. When you were growing up and you got in a hassle with your sibling, what was the last thing you wanted?
To get I don't think this is a good question for me.
You didn't want mom and dad involved, right? Whatever happened, you didn't want mom and dad involved, because you knew
you were going to lose the keys to the car. It was going to get a lot worse.
Trouble.
Right. You didn't. And if you ask me, I think Eric, is kind of hit on the solution. Is, if you pull in the authority figure, nobody's going to like the result. And in this case, the authority figure has been pulled in.
Except the authorities.
And I bet, I bet nobody's going to like the result.
I think that's really good. But I mean, not just that, we also have to think like these places are going to keep developing. I mean, there's more people. I really think like Airbnb, you see it everywhere now too. It's not just in Joshua Tree, and that's only going to keep developing, really.
Well, but see here, my concern, if I were living out in Joshua Tree, my concern with the ordinance would be that it squeezes out the little guys or gals. There's a clip of a lady saying, "Hey, this puts like extra food for my hungry teenager on the table."
Right.
So it squeezes them out, and the capital required to get into the business now goes up to the level of you're going to get Hilton hotels out there.
Yeah, and the people that can afford Hiltons are not nicer people than the people that can afford a yurt. So, the people are people, and everyone can understand being civil to each other, and you don't need always county involvement. A lot of times, getting involved in stuff like that, they talk about problems as a pretext to getting in and getting a structure that they can do their county stuff.
Yeah, you don't want mom and dad involved.
I agree with that. And then it's going to cost you money in this
Oh, it's going to cost money every year.
It's going to cost a lot of money.
Have an inspection.
Well, that's going to...
You have an initial inspection. You got a follow-up inspection. You got
every year inspection.
Yeah. That's not helping.
A lot of money. Well, that wraps it up for us here at U-Turn Radio. Thank you so much to David Wirt for calling in, and also for Katie from Pen and Napkins organization. If you want more U-Turn, go ahead and go to uturnradio.com for more of these amazing, fun shows where you get to learn a whole lot of stuff. That wraps it up. Thank you guys, and drive safe out there in the rain.